This is Japanese Anemone, which is flowering really beautifully here in full sunlight in the garden at Blakeney on the North Norfolk coast in the UK. It's the first week in August we're just coming into now. This has been in flower for about two and a half weeks. And what we need to do to keep this flowering is to prevent it from setting seed. And what we're looking to remove, if you look at those little buttons, they're very different from the buds, and we're just removing those so that it's not going to seed, and just leaving the secondary florets of buds that come along, and that will continue now to flower if we continue to deadhead regularly and remove those seed pods. If we can take the seeds off, not the buds. Sometimes it's quite difficult to see the difference between them, particularly when you're putting your snips into it.
They're yellow, aren't they?
But they are yellow, and the buds are sort of a
They're the
mauvey
old
green.
flowers.
So it's worthwhile continuously on a weekly basis removing those, and that will ensure that all the nutrition that this plant's generating goes into the formation of these secondary buds and continue to produce those and flower well into September. And the reason we can do that is that the Japanese anemones, once they get established like this, you're not really looking to generate new plants from seed. What they will do, and if we just show you down here, this little plant here is coming up from a root runner, and these actually, when this clump was planted, if I just draw back, if you see that edge there to the border, all the original planting was in that part, and the root runners have come forward into the sun, and all this secondary growth has formed
Little baby
up
one there.
from root runners, and this will continue. Here's another one. Look, in its first year it's producing a flower spike, and all these plants basically, if we took a fork through this, wouldn't do it now. What would do it is in the dormant season, sometime between late October, November, depending on how mild your climate is and how long these go on flowering for, right the way through to late spring, around March or April, is to lift these, pot them on, or plant them out directly where you want your new Japanese anemones to grow. They are slow to establish, that's one thing to say about Japanese anemones, but once they get going, then they tend to proliferate quite well. But you must be patient with those little plants. Give them 2 or 3 years to get established. Make sure you're watering and feeding them well. These will tolerate a good degree of shade. If we just show you this border here, which is north facing, obviously not the same degree of flower that we've got in full sun. We've got a rather special variety over here, a lovely double one. Because these are in a much shadier position, they're growing to around 4 feet tall, but they will grow perfectly happily there, and they're proliferating along this border and will give us a nice show a little later than the ones that are grown in full sun.